Daybreak with Steve and Ivy Gruber. Steve and Ivy off today. Scot Bertram sitting in. They're back tomorrow. Stephen Moore is with us right now on the program. Been a guest a few times with Steve and Ivy in the past. He's founder of the Ukraine Freedom Project. Find him on X at also ukrainefreedomproject.org. Stephen, good morning to you.
Scott, good to be with you, man.
Although morning for us, not morning for you because you're actually in Kyiv in Ukraine. And you can
Yeah,
see that the city behind you there. What are
yeah.
things like right now in Kyiv on a
Well,
day-to-day basis for residents?
sure. Here, let me show you here. I'm going to get a little bit closer. I'm going to step out of the view. You can see this is the Kyiv skyline. This is what I'm seeing in Kyiv right now. I'm at the top of one of the tallest buildings, actually, one of the tallest hotels in Kyiv, and so I wanted to just give your viewers a sense of it. And here's what you don't see out there. Does anybody see plumes of smoke? Does anybody see buildings that are crumbling? And that's because they're not there. And you know, the Putin sends hundreds of drones most nights to Ukraine to kill civilians. And the Ukrainians take out about 90% of those drones. And so a lot of people think that Kiev is a smoking ruin. A lot of people, Viktor Orban famously said that, this is ungovernable. It's like Afghanistan. And so it's not. And, the Ukrainians are very good at defending themselves, better than the Russians, in fact, because the Ukrainians are now sending hundreds of drones inside Russia. So
Hmm.
much so that Putin had to ask permission of Trump to protect his military parade from Ukrainian drones. And so I just want to give a sense firsthand here of what I'm seeing and what it's like here in Kyiv.
Yeah, so we can see behind you what it's like on the ground. But tell us a bit about the sentiment. We are now, of course, years into this war. What do you hear from people on the streets? What are people saying about the effort and the war thus far?
Well, it's great to hear your last guest because for Ukrainians, this is a lot like their war of independence because the history of Ukraine is that Russia does terrible things to them frequently.
Hmm.
And, they launched this full scale invasion in 2022, and everybody thought that Russia was going to roll through Ukraine in 3 weeks. And it just hasn't happened. And these people are so resilient and they're so steadfast. They just hold on. And now the tide is turning because there's no smoke on this skyline, but there's actually half a dozen Russian cities right now where there's
Hmm.
big plumes of smoke because the Ukrainians are taking out Russian refining capacity. They're taking about 40% of Russia's refineries out using these long range drones and missiles that Ukraine developed themselves. This is like they've gone from asking for handouts from the rest of the world to protect themselves to building some of the best drones and missiles that at a very cheap price. They're really taking the war back to Putin and Russia.
Stephen Moore with us from Ukraine Freedom Project. And some of the updates get a little buried now because Venezuela, Iran, there are many things happening on the world stage, right, Stephen? But the things I've seen indicate that Ukraine is actually taking back some of that territory that was lost earlier in the war to Russia on the front lines. Is that true? Is that correct?
That is true, and now listen. Nobody's taking a bunch of territory all at once. Frank
Little by
Luntz had a
little.
great piece where,
Yeah.
yeah, well, and Luntz said that for Russia to take all of Ukraine at the rate it's going would take until the year 2256 and require 101 million casualties. So that's not going to happen. The thing to notice is that the Russian people no longer feel safe because Vladimir Putin can't protect them from Ukrainian missiles and drones. The other thing that is important, you mentioned Iran, you mentioned Venezuela. Well, the Russians, a lot of those weapons that the Iranians are using are Russian weapons. They're now taking drones via the Caspian Sea to Iran. So Russia is sending weapons to Iran to kill American service members. So it's who are the good guys, who are the bad guys? It's super obvious. And it's worth noting the Ukrainians are sending weapons to defend against those Russian missiles and drones that are being sent to Iran.
President Trump insists he still wants a peace deal. He wants this war to end. They're working on it, I suppose. From the sense of the Ukrainians you talk to, is there a desire to have this end as quickly as possible now that they're somewhat on the offensive? Do they want it to carry on for a little bit? What's the sense of how quickly they'd like this confrontation, this war, to cease?
Well, it's super simple. If Russia leaves Ukraine, the war will be over. And if Ukraine stops fighting, then Russia will roll through Ukraine. There's one person in the world who can stop this, and that's Vladimir Putin. And I think he's shown again. He had to ask Donald Trump to ask Zelensky for a ceasefire
Hmm.
to protect his military parade. That's not a sign of strength. That is a sign of someone who's hanging on to power and he's really worried about losing it. So Trump's strategy has been to push on Zelensky because he thought that was where the pressure points are, and that might not be the case. It might be better for Trump to push on Putin because Putin is again, he is unable to defend the Russian people against these Ukrainian drone attacks.
Stephen, got about 60 seconds left here. Give people a sense of what Ukraine Freedom Project is and what you've been doing in Ukraine. You can find more at ukrainefreedomproject.org.
Yeah. Well, Scott, one of the big things we talk about is Vladimir Putin's systematic torture and murder of Ukrainian Christians for their faith. In occupied Ukraine, there's about 3 million Christians. And, 80% of Ukraine is Christian. And there is not a church in occupied Ukraine that Putin does not control. And so if you and I want to have a Bible study in our homes in occupied Ukraine, we would do so under the threat of 20 years in a Russian prison. Putin has killed as many as 80 pastors and priests, and he's targeting evangelicals disproportionately. They make up about 45% of the pastors that have been killed, and they're only about 4% of the population here. So, given your work at Hillsdale, I think that, this is something maybe you and I should talk further about.
Stephen Moore from the Ukraine Freedom Project, ukrainefreedomproject.org. Also find them on X as well. Stephen, thanks so much for joining us this morning on Daybreak.
Love it. Thanks, Scott.
Appreciate it.